Dear friends, I'm going to talk to you about France in 2015, which was the topic which has been prescribed. And I'm going to try to respect the 15 minutes limit that also has been prescribed. Making predictions about the future is a tempting activity for mankind. Quote, to govern means to anticipate. Who doesn't anticipate is doomed to fail. That are the words of Émile de Girardin, who was a politician and journalist of the 19th century. Creating short-term anticipations, however, is a difficult exercise, as there are always some unexpected events, or events one could think they would or could occur without knowing the exact date and the impact they may have. Such are for 2014, the annexion of Crimea by Russia, the pursuit of the conflict in the eastern part of Ukraine, the sudden progress of Daesh in the Middle East, the disastrous Ebola epidemic, the fall of oil prices, etc., etc. However, I am going to mention some events that could shape life in France in 2015, and then I shall comment on the economic situation of my country and the way we perceive the future in that respect. What are the big events of the year to come? Of course, many external events will have an impact on our lives, and we will follow them closely. On our domestic scene, we will only have local elections for our départements, districts, in March, and for the regions at the end of the year. But of course, the results will be scrutinized as forerunners for our presidential and parliamentary elections, which will take place in 2017, especially because primaries will be organized in both political sides. The debate of potential candidates is already heated and is going to enthrall both the French and the foreign press next year. Two topics will be very demanding for us in 2015, the continuous struggle against terrorism and the climate conference in Paris at the end of the year. The continuation of the struggle against terrorism has two aspects, one international and one domestic. On the international level, after our intervention in Mali in 2013, our forces are currently present in 5 Sahel countries upon their request. Our coordinated action with local armies is intended to deprive terrorist groups of the facilities provided by the uncertainty and porosity of the borders in that desert zone. Not far from this zone, there is another matter of concern for us, the chaos spreading all over Libya. In Iraq, we are participating in the international coalition to support the government struggling with the progress of the so-called Islamic State, Daesh. We are supporting the Iraqi air forces with our Rafales. The help provided by the coalition has allowed a rollback after the quick advance of Daesh last summer. Nevertheless, the situation remains a concern, as it is disastrous from a human point of view, and it's difficult to achieve anything definitive due to interferences with the nearby havoc in Syria. We also have to struggle against terrorism on our own soil. About 1,000 of French youngsters have been recruited so far to take part in the jihad in Syria. We have to think and to act to prevent this phenomenon to spread. Also, we face a real threat to our security, as those young people are openly planning to organize bomb attacks or shootings upon their return to France. we have adopted a new law which allows their arrest when they are back, just as Serbia did the same to face the same situation, but on a lesser scale, of course. On a totally different subject, climate change, we call upon the full resources of our diplomacy worldwide against this plague, which is less visible but no less threatening long term. France will be hosting the 21st UN Conference on COP21 in December 2015. After years of failed negotiations and worsening climate conditions, it's now urgent to reach an agreement on this issue, since the stakes are very high. We must no longer escape our collective responsibility to limit the global warming of our atmosphere brought about by human activity and specifically carbon emissions. Our target is a universal and binding agreement so that no one can evade it. It's encouraging to know that recently the US and China together agreed to do their part. The Lima conference, COP20, which has just been concluded, has allowed some steps forward, but there is still much to be done. Every country can and must do its share, and as a representative of the presidency of COP21, I shall encourage the Serbian authorities to do so as well. I'm glad to see that they have set up an intersectorial group in charge of preparing their focal point of the Paris conference in 12 months' time. I'll now talk about our difficulties and how we face them. The readers of The Economist will not be surprised if I talk now of the difficulties we are facing. This is a topic on which they are well informed by their favorite news magazine, which always keep a watchful eye on my country. Our public debt has exploded since 2008 crisis due to a combination of weak growth and the financial efforts that we had to sustain to support our own economy, as well as other Euro countries in difficulty. Our public debt reaches now 95% of our GDP and should come close to 100% the following year. Our level of debt is not sustainable, of course, and we are determined to reduce it. The tools we can use are, for the moment, the reduction of our budget deficit and the upturn of growth. It's now been several years since we are engaged in restoring the balance of our public finances. We have reformed our pension scheme in 2013. We have a savings program of 50 billion euros on the triennium 2015 to 17, with 21 billion to be saved for the sole year 2015. In spite of these measures, our budget deficit will still be 4.1% in 2015, which provokes some criticism from the European Commission and from some partners such as Germany. We are determined to make the necessary efforts, but let's be clear. We want the rhythm of our budgetary stabilization to be compatible with the preservation of growth. We need public expense, for it is a factor of demand, and reducing it drastically would threaten our still fragile growth and prevent the recovery of our economy. Our priority is precisely to reinforce growth and not weaken it. We know that the main problem in France and Europe is the weakness of growth. Economists who never agree on anything agree at least on that. That problem is upstream of all the others: unemployment, deficit, public debt. The other way around, economic recovery would solve most of the other problems mechanically. This is why recovery is our priority. What are our tools for recovery? To reconcile with growth is far from being simple, as the reasons why we lost it are complex. There is no simple recipe or a magic potion, and besides, we must work with long-term goals in mind. So we are combining all available tools to achieve a good result. First of all, we need to establish a better partnership between the public authorities and the businesses. Businesses, they have in their hands production and employment, the two growth factors we need, and these factors feed demand and supply. The French government is establishing a better coordination and has created two instruments to help businesses to restore the financial margins they have lost during the last years. We have the tax credit for competitiveness and the responsibility pact. These financial tools can be used by businesses to invest, to prospect new markets, and innovate. We are also working to make the economy more flowing and more reactive. In this very moment, we have a new draft law before our Parliament, presented by our Minister of Economy, Emmanuel Macron. It consists of a wide range of 106 measures on different topics, but they are all inspired by a unique goal: make the rules more simple, more flexible, speed up the proceedings, open up the competition, lower the costs of services, in particular legal services. Several elements of this law are subject to a heated debate right now, but a majority of citizens are in favor of the governmental approach. They understand the situation and they want solutions. We also set priorities to our public expense on long-term investment, such as education, innovation, research, entrepreneurship. 43% of our young people have a university degree. Our universities are engaged in a movement of concentration or federation in order to be more competitive, to reach a critical size, enabling them to strengthen their research teams and to make partnerships with international partners and with the private sector. We dedicate 2.3% of our GDP to research, which is more than the European average. We are seeking to channel the research towards promising activities in which we are already well placed, such as TIC, nanotechnologies, or biotechnologies. On the eve of the conference on climate change that we will host next December, the energy transition is also an opportunity for our economy. And there is a range of productions to develop in unison with this evolution, such as positive energy buildings, electric or hybrid vehicles, wind turbines, and so on. We are also advocating international coordination to solve some problems which create obstacles for growth and to join forces. In particular, on the European level, Jean-Claude Juncker's investment program will have repercussions not only on growth, but also on the cohesion of the European space, an idea that France has always been very supportive of. And I'd like to add here in Belgrade how important it is to include right now Southeast European countries in this cohesion by realizing the communication corridors for transport, for energy, and for digital data. But all in all, I see no reason to give in to pessimism. The French people are often said to be pessimistic, and doubtful, which is rather paradoxical because at the same time our country is criticized for its arrogance. Several writers, essayists, philosophers belong to a group that we call declinists because they predict or denounce the so-called decline or decay of France. This line of thought is based on a vision of the past which is, of course, artificially embellished, on a nostalgic conservatism, and it reveals a difficulty to adapt to change. On the contrary, we have excellent arguments to feel confident about ourselves and about our future. We are still one of the most powerful economies in the world. We are at the 5th place for the GDP after the US, China, Japan, and Germany. We are among the first places worldwide for export of services, export of goods, stock of investments, our investments abroad, I mean. Our demography is lively. We are, after Ireland, the European country with the biggest birth rate. And which better proof of confidence in future can you find other than giving birth? Let us see now how the foreigners see France. Not the journalists, but the investors. In the manufacturing sector, foreign businesses represent 22% of employment and 28% of added value. Foreign laboratories represent 28% of research on our territory. Foreign capitalization, almost 1/2 of our stock exchange. When you ask foreign businesses settled in France about the reasons of their choice, they will reply that it's all about the qualification and training of the labor force, the size of the market, innovation and research, economic stability, business climate, and productivity of the workforce. We are also proud to be the 3rd country which welcomes most foreign students in the world, 295,000 students. That is about 12% of the students in our universities. Young foreigners are attracted by the quality of our curricula, but also by the propitious financial conditions. University fees are very low, a few €100 per year, which is the equivalent of a grant by the French government for all the students. We are keen to see youngsters come from all over the world to our universities and make them benefit from their dynamism and their ideas. Dear friends, for once, I have not talked today about the French-Serbian relations, although they are, you know well, the apple of my eye. But it was not the requested topic. And I'd like to conclude this speech by wishing all those who are listening to us peaceful and joyful end-of-the-year holidays and a happy and successful year 2015 here in Serbia.